2,000 years ago. The world is headed on a sinful path. How many of you know that?
Yeah.
How many of you know the world's getting eviler? I know, I'm not sure that's even a word, but it's true. No matter what you call it, that's what it is. But here's what I want us to understand. As the world gets more evil, people who follow the way, Jesus, are going to have a harder time. He's checking, I better check too. Yes, I have a green light.
No, he was moving it out of the way.
Now, here's the thing. In an evil society, and it doesn't matter which evil society you want to talk about, but in any evil society, all of a sudden, if evil is progressing, then the good people become the villains. Okay? In a society that is progressively getting worse, the good people become the villains. And in Ephesus, the people of the way, which were the early Christians, they didn't call themselves Christian, they called themselves followers of the way because Jesus said, I am the way. There became a great problem with the way. Because news spreads fast. How many of you know news spreads fast? And if everybody wants evil, the worst person in the world is good. About that time, there arose a great disturbance about the way. A silversmith named Demetrius, who made silver shrines of Artemis and brought in no little business for the craftsmen. In other words, he was the guy, he was the promoter.
Reread that.
A silversmith named Demetrius, who made silver shrines of Artemis, brought in no little business for the craftsmen.
Okay, because mine
In other words,
brought in a lot of business.
well, no little
Is a lot.
is a lot.
Okay.
Double negative. I did not write the book. I did proofread it.
Thank you.
Okay? Here's the thing. One person who has evil in their heart and will draw more people to them to draw, and it will always go back to money. Madeline Murray O'Hara, one person in the early 60s, had prayer and Bible reading taken out of every school in the country. And all the Christians in the whole country couldn't put Humpty together again. Yes, I mixed metaphors there. But all you know the story of Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Demetrius got all his friends together and said, this is what we want to do. We have to protect. And it's about our pocketbook. See, he had heard what happened in that other country. If the silver business, if they lost their craftsmanship to Artemis, the way the horoscope people and the occult people left where Paul had been, our business will collapse. I want you to recognize, so far, has there anything been about Artemis here? No, except Artemis is the object. The God is immaterial to the pocketbook. Why? Because the reason to have an alternate God 9 times out of 10 is about a pocketbook. He called them together, all the other craftsmen, along with the workmen in related trades, and he said, "Men, you know we receive a good income from this business. We're making good money. And if these Christians have their way and take away the gods, what's going to happen to our bottom line?" How many sin industries? I'll let you fill in the blank where you want it to be. How many sin industries would be very upset if the Christians got together and worked to get rid of them? And the government won't let it happen because how much money goes to the government because of it? Now, I'm saying this 2 days before elections, and I am not being partisan here. Okay? I'm looking everywhere, and I'm not being partisan. Because what happens is, most of the sin in our life is regulated somehow by the government and they get a cut.
Mhm.
Think about it for a minute. They get a cut. Sin always pays somebody. Verse 26. And you see and hear how this fellow Paul has convinced and led astray a large number of people here in Ephesus and in practically the whole province of Asia. He's leading people astray from what? Think about it for a minute. He's leading them astray from the false gods. That wasn't his argument. He's leading them astray from our pocketbook. The holiness movement has had a problem with sin for a long time. People say, Pastor, why is it that for years and years we didn't dance and we didn't go to the movies, we don't drink, we don't play cards, we don't gamble, we don't do this and we don't do that? Easy. Because of what it leads to. Tobacco use does not help the human body. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah.
In any of its forms. So why would we want to hurt what God gave us? But the government isn't going to tell. The government's going to say, well, don't smoke, don't sell to children, but we're going to tax it to $10 a pack. And that'll make it all right. For who? For who? Alcohol. Now, folks, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that anybody who's ever taken a drink of alcohol is evil. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you that I'm 63 years old and I've never had a drink. I'm going to tell you my mom was 86 when she died and never had a drink. I'm going to tell you that I've seen people that 1 is too many and 10's not enough. I'm going to tell you that alcoholism has racked this country's behaviors since its inception as a country in 1776.
And God does say drunkenness can lead to sin.
And drunkenness can lead to sin.
That's right.
And I'm not even going to mention how many thousands of dollars, tax dollars, that we spent trying to eradicate it back in the 20s, and you can't legislate morality.
Mhm. True.
You cannot make a law for morality. That can only change by a habit of the heart. You want to keep going? How many states now have casinos and lotteries? Why? Because there's a sucker born every minute, and more money goes into their coffers and goes out to the people. What would happen if the Christian church got together, honestly, and banned it? Number one, the country would go against us. But they went against Paul. So these guys got together. And he goes on to say, he says that man-made gods are no gods at all. Well, there's an idea for you, folks. If humans made the item, chances are it's not divine. Does that surprise anybody? See, he's stirring up people. And if you want to stir people up, hit them in the pocketbook. He says, man-made gods are no gods at all. There is danger not only that our trade will lose a good name, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will be discredited. You notice what he said first. Was it about the god Artemis?
No.
No, the temple was an afterthought. They're going to ruin our trade's good name. We're going to lose money. And then Artemis will be discredited. And the goddess herself, who is worshipped throughout the province of Asia, and the world will be robbed of her divine majesty. How's that for a third-rate argument? First, it's going to hit you in your pocketbook. Then the temple that you actually get to work in might be discredited. Do you ever notice how many people want to credit sin and want to credit falsehood? Think about it for a minute. People who are into the sin industry will discredit truth, honesty, and morality to benefit themselves. And then they'll tie in freedom of choice. Now, I'm not going to tell you, I don't tell people how to vote. I don't tell you which party to vote for. I tell you that when you vote, when you go into that voting booth or you mail that envelope or whatever it is, you should ask Jesus who he wants on that ballot. And you should follow him. Whether it means you vote totally against your own party or not is immaterial to what God's view is. It's also God's view. He tells you to vote the party that you belong to. Because there's no good party. And I'm going to say this is my only disclaimer today. There are Christians in every party. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah.
And there are non-Christians in every party. But you need to vote your God's conscience that he gives you. And they're afraid that they might be robbed of the divine majesty as the third guest. So then verse 28, and this is a long passage, I realize this, we're going to move fast, but we have to understand what does it say, because what is happening in Ephesus in the first 100 years of the church is happening in our country right now. It is happening in our world right now. In fact, a couple of our people were talking before service, and they were saying that in one country, not this one yet, a person was praying silently in front of an establishment and got arrested. They brought him in for questioning and said, "What were you doing?" "I was praying." "What were you praying for?" And the person told them, and they got arrested because you're not allowed to say that. They didn't say it. They thought it.
Yeah.
But in an immoral world, you will go to jail for what you think, even if you don't say it. Or what they think you said. Boy, that happens a lot, doesn't it? And I'm going to make it very simple. Some of us may go to jail before our lifetime is over, if the Lord tarries. When they heard this, they were furious, and they began shouting, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians!" Now I want you to think about that for just a moment. They psyched themselves up so much that the group of them, the artisans, get together and start chanting, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." Wow, if your godness is only to one group of people in Ephesus, are you really that big and important? But here's the kicker. Verse 29, soon the whole city was in an uproar. See, why do we have these parades of certain groups and certain kinds? And you can put in the political, ethnic, any other kind of group you want to put in. Because what they're doing is they're trying to get their message out that we're the best and everybody else better fall in line with us, even if it's sinful. And that's the problem. Could you imagine what would happen if we Christians had a Christian celebration and tried to get a marching permit through our local town? They've even gotten rid of Christmas parades because, oh my goodness, it has the word Christ in it. Soon the whole city's in an uproar. The people seized Gaius, Aristarchus, Paul's traveling companion from Macedonia, and they rushed as one man into the theater. They took him into the amphitheater to present him to the whole body so that 1,000 people could scream at him. Nothing like a little intimidation, is there? Did you ever notice how when Christians are doing something good, they bring in a bunch of people to scream at them? And then when there's something bad happens, they bring in the one person who knows the least about it and put them on TV? Did you ever notice that? Well, I don't know. I heard the shot. I was looking the other way, but the guy fell down. It must have been a submachine gun. I think really it was a tank. I didn't see any tanks. I saw a Volkswagen. So they bring him into the middle of this amphitheater, scream to shout him down, to make him the point of the punishment. Verse 30. Paul wanted to appear before the crowd, but the disciples wouldn't let him. Paul's like, "Let me down there." They're all holding him back. "No, you can't go." He's like, "But that's my man." See, Paul's the one. Paul says, "You know what? You want to get in together? Come get in. I'll go down. I'll stand in the middle of them. I can hold my own." See, that's one of the things. That's the other thing that happens. you ever notice when evil comes in, they always pick the weakest person from the other side? Got silent in here real quick, didn't it? See, Paul wanted to appear, but the disciples wouldn't let him. Even some of the officials of the province, who were friends of Paul, sent a message begging him not to venture to that theater. Paul, in the name of all that's good, don't go there. And Paul's going, the turmoil's about me. Why are they picking on him? Let me go. No, come on, Paul. You really don't want that. You know what has happened in the past. How many of you remember the couple chapters ago, all the different things that happened, where they tried to kill Paul, where they tried to run him out of town, where they tried to stone him, and they're going, we don't want that here. Verse 32, the assembly was in confusion. Some were shouting one thing and some another. Isn't that the way it normally is? Half the people who are in the riot don't even know what they're rioting for. They're just doing it because Bob came with them. Well, he's shouting, so I can shout. Sorry, Joanne. That's just an easy name. Some were shouting, most of the people did not even know why they were there. Isn't that the way it is? Isn't that the way sin works? People get swept up in the emotion of it. Now, I've been to churches where there's been high emotion. I will tell you I'm not a high emotion guy. Do I have personal emotions? Absolutely. Do I turn around and get all caught up in the emotions? Very rarely. Very rarely. That song we sang today, Blessed Be the Name of the Lord. I was emotional. If you notice, my hand went up twice. Okay? That's a biggie for me. But here's the thing. When your emotion kicks into high gear, your rationality kicks into low gear or neutral. And they're shouting all this stuff, and a lot of people are going, I'm shouting. Think of another time where they brought one man into the middle of a group, and a group of people started shouting. Do we remember that time? Mm-hmm. That time it was crucify him.
Yeah.
Verse 33, the Jews pushed Alexander to the front, and some of the crowd shouted instructions to him. They thought Alexander was going to be their man. Alexander the Great, Alexander the Conqueror. That wasn't him. There were more than one Alexander in that day. But they were like, he's going to be our man. He's going to take the bullhorn. He's going to put all the charges on him, and that guy's just going to shrink. Alexander motions for silence in order to make a defense before the people. Alexander's going to defend the guy? That's not what we hired him for. We hired him to take up our cause, not their cause. I was in a church one time that told me they don't want new people in the church. They just want me to bring back all the people who left because they were disgruntled.
Because they were what?
Disgruntled. All the people who left before I got there, they just wanted me to bring them back, and I went, why? We already know what their problems are. Let's get new problems. How many of you know that? See, if all we want to do is look backward and name the people that have left, I don't want to be here. I want people to come in to learn about Jesus. I would much rather have people who were totally ignorant and evil than people who had their biases and they're going to live by. But he goes on. Verse 34, when they realized that Alexander was a Jew, how can he be a Jew? He has a Greek name. He has a pagan name, Alexander. I was accused of that once myself with the name Kaufman. I was living up in North Jersey, and they thought I was Jewish. And one of my good friends was going to invite me over to dinner until he found out I wasn't Jewish, and he withdrew the offering. I looked at him and I said, why? He says, well, you're not Jewish. I would have to bring out the non-kosher dishware. True story. I said, does it look different? He goes, no, but we have to wash it separately and we have to put it in a separate cupboard. He says, I thought you were Jewish. The way he found out was we went to a place to eat lunch together, and I ordered a cheese steak. He goes, you can't do that, you're kosher. I said, no, I'm not. I'm Methodist. That was before I became a Nazarene, but I would say Nazarene now, no problem. But understand, people think what they think. They all shouted, This part kills me. I want you to think about how evil this is. When they realized he was a Jew, they all shouted for about 2 hours. How many of you ever heard somebody shout and scream for 2 straight hours? Great is Artemis of the Ephesians! Great is Artemis of the Ephesians! Great! That alone would give me a headache.
A few concerts, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's really just an hour and a half, not a full 2. Okay? But here's what I want us to think about for a minute. That's what sin does. It whips up the emotion and makes evil good. What was Paul's crime? What evil did Paul do? Tell people that Jesus is Jesus. Tell people that Jesus is actually God. Tell people that their human ways won't get them to heaven. How many of you think that's in any way evil? How many love it when sinners become saints?
After he changed, yes.
How many of you love sinners who become saints? How many of you love sinners who become crude saints? Because that's where everybody starts, isn't it?
Amen.
What do you mean a crude saint? I'm going to tell you, when somebody comes in the door and accepts Jesus, their old life doesn't miraculously fall off, just their sin.
Yeah, the pregnant girl doesn't become unpregnant.
Yeah, a pregnant girl doesn't become a virgin. Okay? An alcoholic doesn't automatically drop alcohol.
Sometimes they do.
Sometimes, but not automatically. They become rough. And our job as the church is to show them the way. That's what Paul did. He said, look, the occult isn't the way for you. There's a better way. How many of you know there's a better way than the occult in all its forms? How many of you know there's a better way than addiction in all its forms?
Amen.
How many of you know there's a better way than selfishness in all its forms?
Amen.
How many of you know that the world won't know it unless you stand up and talk about it? Well, I let my testimony, I let my life be my testimony. Good. And I know there was a great theologian in the past who said, show Christ and use words if necessary. But I'm telling you, in today's society, people have been baptized to good works, have been inoculated, not baptized, vaccinated, to good works. So you have to use words. You have to invite them. You have to say, hey, come check us out. Now, I may get in trouble for what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway because I've been in trouble before and I'll be in trouble again. I got a phone call this week from a most unusual place. In fact, I won't name, it was a company. It wasn't even an individual, it was a company. And they said, we're trying to get hold of the Church of the Nazarene in Hopewell. I said, well, you got the pastor, and I told him my name because I'm proud of my church. Are we okay with that? Mm-hmm. You know, they had these little signboards that you can put out. I heart my church. And then in a little tiny print it says the letters. I don't want that. See, I would have to have it say, I heart in small letters, and then great big letters, Grace Community, Church of the Nazarene, and I'm not going to drop any of it. But that's way too big and too long. But you know what? We're Nazarene for a reason. Okay? We're not community church. We're grace community. We love grace, and grace takes care of us. God's grace. Mm-hmm. I have to be careful because some people know somebody named Grace, and that's not who's taking care of us. Could you imagine what would happen if for 2 hours straight the Christian community said, great is God! Come with us and be saved. Now, not just one person. They'll get hoarse real fast. Although I can go like this for a good long time. I once clocked at 2.5, 3 hours at this voice. With a microphone, I can go pretty good. Sin is loud. You're going to be bombarded. If you haven't recognized it already, in the next 2 days, you're going to be bombarded with advertisements for everything, and many of them are going to be promoting, well, if you elect this person, we'll be able to sin this way. appointed. If you're online, I'm not trying to do your own thing. You do your own thing. But the truth is, God's way says that sin is sin. God's way says that if you keep sinning, you'll part yourself from God. And then, I was going to stop right here because I know we're close. But I got to get this next verse in here just anyway. The city clerk quieted the crowd. The city clerk comes in and goes, let's make peace. Let's have calm. I'm in charge of the city. I don't want a headache. Verse 35, for those of you who are reading with us. The city clerk quieted the crowd and he said, men of Ephesus, doesn't all the whole world know that the city of Ephesus is the guardian of the temple of the great Artemis and of her image that fell down from heaven? Does that sound like a compromise to you? What he's really saying is, let the guy talk. We all know what the truth is. The world knows that the Ephesians, we're not Corinth, for heaven's sake. All the Ephesians, the whole world knows that Ephesus, we are the guardian of this God group. Wow, it sounds like some churches today, doesn't it? You listen to some churches, you can't believe that anybody's going to get into heaven but them. And I'm saying it because there's some churches who believe that they're so righteous that nobody else can touch them. And they fall into this same idolatry. Therefore, since these facts are undeniable, by the way, in promotion, if you want to promote somebody, you want to change somebody's opinion, make false facts and tell them it's undeniable. Well, if you make up the facts, of course they can't deny it. Because you can make up any fact you want. And they can't deny it because how do you deny something that didn't exist? In for a penny, in for a pound. Here we go. Therefore, since these facts are undeniable, you ought to be quiet and not do anything rash. Have reason, folks. He's an idiot. He's not right. We all know the truth. So there's no reason to get upset about it. You see, that's the emperor's new clothes syndrome. I'll tell you what, the emperor was still naked. Okay? And that little kid, I read a story one time that was the aftermath, the sequel to the emperor's new clothes. And what the society did, the king got all his spin doctors in there, and they made him a non-person. By making him a non-person, nobody listened to him, nobody believed him. He lived his life happily, and they were deluded. That's what sin does. Sin tries to make all Christians non-entities. You're great to be a Christian at home and at church, according to Hillary. Oh, did I say that in public? She did quote that. But Christianity has no place in the marketplace. Christianity has no place in the business area. Christianity has no place on the street corner. Christianity has no place other than in church, where only people who want to hear it can hear it, or in your own home, where only people want to hear it can hear it. Is that really what we're about?
No. God has a place everywhere.
Verse 37. You have brought these men here, though they haven't robbed the temple, they haven't even blasphemed Artemis. They didn't even say anything about Artemis. You ever notice that they label us Christians with every nasty sign they can do it, even if they've never talked to us? But the fact is undeniable. If then Demetrius and his fellow craftsmen have a grievance against anybody, the courts are open, and so are the proconsuls, so are the judges. They can press charges. If there's anything further you want to bring up, it's got to be settled by the legal assembly. Not just a kangaroo court where you're going to take one poor guy who represents the other side and you're going to scream in his face for hours and then string him up. Verse 40. As it is, we are in danger of being charged with rioting because of today's events. In that case, we would not be able to account for this commotion since there is no reason for it. I want you to see, at first it sounded like he was just being appeasement to the other side. Then he's going, but you know, guys, publicity will look bad if we have a riot here. Can you imagine that? Sin says, but if we do what we really want to do, it'll make us look bad. We haven't heard that any time, have we? We got to spin doctor this because it's an undeniable fact that he's nuts, we're right, so let's just look calm. And we'll just keep sinning, we'll do it quietly, and the majority of the people will go on loving us. After he had said this, he dismissed the assembly. On a good hand, Pastor, you're talking about a good hand in this? Yeah. On a good hand, let me find that verse again. Poor Alexander and the other guy, Gaius Aristarchus. On a good hand, they didn't get killed. On a good hand, they didn't get shouted down. On a good hand, they lived to preach another day. On a bad hand, the people who didn't know why they were there still don't know why they were there. The people who were the instigators of the problem didn't get appeased. Poor Paul, he got left at home. Because everybody held him back and said, no, you can't go out there. That was not a win or a lose for Christianity. It was a draw. Pastor, why do you say it that way? Because the truth is, when we Christians open our mouth, it will cause upheaval. Why? Because when you speak truth in the face of untruth, it don't be pretty. How many of you know that? How many of you know that when you tell the truth to people who are scamming, they don't like it? By the way, I will say this. I had a minute and a half left, so here it is. This week I got a phone call, and it was from a scam group. My wife just went, she's side-eyeing me. I'm in trouble. Here it is. It's a group that I've heard before. I'm not going to tell you who they are, at least not online. If you want to talk to me after service, that's fine. And the person goes, and I will say it's a, in parentheses, law enforcement support group.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Okay? And they get on and they said, hi, we're from, and I said, hold on, aren't you part of a law enforcement group? And they said, yeah. I said, doesn't law enforcement say don't do anything over the phone because there's too many scammers out there? How many of you heard the police say that? Don't trust phone scammers. Or don't trust phone solicitations. Thank you. See, and then he called the next number. And the next number. And I'm not even, one time I asked, that person has been hounding me for 3 months now, just so you know. I even asked, are you a robot? And he said, no, I'm not a robot. I said, are you sure? But folks, we have to be truth. Good or bad. Liked or disliked, we need to speak truth in all situations. When you go in the voting booth, vote truth. Will there be people trying to sway you both ways and every other way possible? Absolutely. Will there be people who rip you for your vote that they don't know you even made? Well, I know you go to that church, you must have voted this way. Don't engage. Just say, I love you and move on. Dear Lord, help us to recognize that you love all people of all voting groups. You even loved Demetrius. Lord, you even loved all the silversmiths. Lord, it's interesting how in this passage, silver was to a false god. And to some cults today, silver is more important to them than gold. Lord, would you let them know that you love them just as much today as ever? Would you let us know that you love us, and let us speak truth without fear. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.